it's okay to take a break. So if you feel like you're hitting the wall, you're hitting fatigue, you're getting really, really bored, we get out and we do something else.
Consistency comes from those one or two things that you do repetitively, and that is where growth comes from.
It just makes so much more sense to have our habits, our finances, the physical increments that we make in the exercises, and the exercises that we choose, the habits that we choose, the ways that we choose to invest and save, for them to be compounding rather than for them to be competing. Hello, everyone, and welcome to yet another episode of the Compounding Mindset brought to you by Access Mutual Fund. I'm Paridhi Doshi, your movement and fitness coach, and we've got Ashdin Doctor, our resident habit coach, along with us. Ashdin, I'm super excited to have this conversation with you today because we are speaking all about habits and consistency.
Amazing.
Now, you've coached hundreds of people when it comes to habits, behavior, how to stay consistent on them. What is that one thing that you think a lot of people are not doing correct when it comes to habits and behavior?
So this is such an interesting question because over the years I've noticed that there is one trend that takes place. And it's not about consistency. Normally people think habits, consistency is going to be hard. Of course. But there's another mistake that people make, which is they take on too many habits at one shot. See, what happens is we get inspired and we see people doing amazing things and we say, oh, I also want to be doing this. I want to be doing this. And people come and make a laundry list of all the habits that they're going to change at one shot. And it's so interesting because I meet people, obviously in my coaching, but also at parties. And they'll find out I'm a habit coach and say, Ashdin, from last week, I'm going to start this, and come up with 7 things. And my immediate answer to them is, you're not going to achieve any of them because you're so diffused in the way that you're creating this. And what I tell people is that when you're creating a habit, don't start more than 3 habits at a time. These 3 habits, done well, chosen well, is going to disrupt your life enough as it is. 7 will be too much for your life to function the normal way. So whenever you're trying to make a change in your life, choosing just 3 habits is going to be the key here. In your fitness world, what is it like when it comes to, I'm sure people come here and tell you, oh, Paridhi, I want to be able to run 20 kilometers and do 35 pull-ups and touch my toes and be super flexible and do a handstand. How do you navigate those waters?
I mean, as you said, correct, you can't do everything all at once because you're just then riding a train to hit burnout very, very fast. And when people come in, they have such competing goals. I want to run my fastest 5K, but I also want to back squat 100 kilos. Like, that's not going to probably happen. So, goal setting becomes so important. And the way I normally work with my clients is to let them know that, yes, let's work on 2 things together. You achieving a great back squat goes hand in hand with your mobility and range of motion being amazing. So, let's pick those 2 habits because we can then layer them up, compound them, and work towards a goal.
Very nice.
You want to work and run your fastest 5K? Great. Let's do that, which also means we can build great muscular endurance. So let's tweak your training and put exercises and movements and frequencies that actually support that. So goal setting, I think, becomes really important over here. And simple awareness and knowledge, explaining them how 2 things layered up can actually help you achieve your goal at the same time. But you're not only then doing one thing, you're actually working on multiple things to make you such a well rounded person, a well rounded athlete when it comes to fitness or otherwise. And as you said, having to do those things is anyways going to create so much disruptions in terms of soreness, in terms of them thinking, oh my God, I have to go back again and do this. So, yes, like less number of things that layer up, things that compound are always the best way to go.
In fact, what I loved about what you said right now is that choose habits that are complementary. Right? This is actually going to make the other habits stronger. We often choose very, very different habits and very often in the opposite direction. One is going to pull the other habit down. So choosing the habits correctly, I think, makes a big difference. I remember I was writing an article the other day about this word called focus. The word focus actually comes from an old fireplace. The fireplace was the focus of the room, and that is where fire and magnifying glasses and focusing on a spot comes from. What's interesting about focus is the opposite of focus. You know what the opposite of focus is?
Unfocused?
We normally think unfocused or distracted. It's actually diffused.
Ah, interesting.
Interesting, right? So, like, imagine if your life is diffused because you don't have any focus, what is your life going to be? It's going to be lukewarm. It's going to be boring. So, I think creating that focus on the way that you want to change and do things makes a huge difference.
Also creates so many more neuromuscular patterns, which is what then dials in that habit for you, right? Because at the end of the day, habit creation is also part creating new pathways in your brain, in the brain chemistry, so that you can keep doing that over and over again. And focus can actually lead to all of those.
Yes.
We do that a lot when it comes to activating certain muscle groups, having to just, hey, focus on if you're coming out of that squat, you're going to not shift your weight to the right or you're not going to shift your weight to the left, so independent of who's working in front of you, right? And that focus is so important because these tiny things, the details that you pay attention to, actually flips the switch in your neurochemistry in the head, in the brain, which allows you to get the most out of every single rep. It doesn't even have to be a set. Just constantly thinking about it, it all makes a difference.
Yeah. I remember listening to these interviews of this bodybuilder. I used to love listening to interviews of bodybuilders. They were so intense in the way. And he was saying that we think sets, but imagine if the rep was where that focus was. And imagine if you gave it your all in each of those reps and each focus in it, you would imagine the kind of quality of muscle that you're creating. I was listening to some world class athletes and they were talking about this concept called periodization, right? It's a sports concept. Can you tell us a little bit about periodization?
Periodization basically works as to if you have a very big goal, goal A, you break it over months, you break it into weeks to be able to reach that. Because 3 months is a really long time. You need to backtrack as to where you are today, what it is that you're going to need over 1 month, over 2 months, over 3 months, and it then keeps on going in cycles. Cycles that also requires enough rest in the middle for you to not hit fatigue, for you to not hit burnout. Because when you look at a macro goal, you really need to dial it down into a micro goal. So that's how periodization basically works. If you want to reach at point A, what is it that you're going to be doing on those tiny, tiny small points in those weeks, on those months leading up to point A that's going to help you achieve that without getting injured, without hitting fatigue. An example of periodization would be if I want to hit a back squat in 3 months down the line, which is going to be at XYZ weight. From that 100%, I'm going to keep dialing down. Okay, I'm going to start week 1 at 50%, week 2 at 55%, week 3 at 60%. But hey, I've been loading my body for week 1, week 2, week 3. Let's dial it down to 55%. Take it easy, let your body recover, and then we bring it back again at 60% and take it from there. That's an example of how periodization usually works.
So again, periodization is very particularly focused on one thing, and that one thing you're moving up and down in order to make that rest and that moment of distress on the body that is what's going to create that change.
100%. That's exactly how that works. And I'm pretty sure, like, when it comes to your clients, we also have periods where they're like intensely, regularly disciplined into doing something, and then there are breaks. Can you tell us a little bit more about how that would work?
So with my clients, I use periodization a lot with the entrepreneurs and the business owners and CEOs. Because when they're starting something new, they need that singular focus on the particular challenge that they're facing. So it is a period of intense focus followed by looking at something else and coming back to this with complete focus once that muscle and once the systems that they put into place starts working. So I took the concept of periodization from the athletic world and used it in the entrepreneurship world because I realized that that is the place where, while we are not physical athletes, we are very much emotional and mental athletes in our boardrooms. So that is where periodization works very, very well.
And because we're also doing so much work, focusing so much energy, it's going to so happen that your CNS physically is going to get tired, be it a physical activity or be it a behavioral and habit activity, because you're putting that stress on your body one way or the other, which basically means you cannot really be doing a lot of things
Yeah.
at multiple times during multiple periods. You just got to be able to do one thing for you to get the most out of it to actually get the bang for your buck in that time frame.
In fact, when you focus on one thing, you become very good at one thing. And you might as well be very good at one thing rather than lukewarm at everything else. You know, the diffused way. I remember, I think it was an investor that was talking about this about, don't worry about property and this and that and other formats of investing. Instead, focus on something that you can learn very well. Otherwise, the way that we look at it is, oh, I want to be in everything. Focus on one thing or two things that is actually going to make the biggest difference in your life. Learn as much about it and start putting in that, money or effort into it.
Think about periodization in your life when it comes to your finances, correct? When you're a certain age, you focus on a certain thing because I'm sure we have a lot more risk capacity at a certain age. That age moves on, you move ahead, you focus on something else. That way, even if you hit plateau, you always have something to look forward to. Periodizing your finances over your life is such a great idea to think of and to do when it comes to just investing your time, your effort, your energy, your money in the right place.
I'm going to love this. Next time, periodization of squat, periodization of your finances is going to be on your next whiteboard. All your clients are going to come in and say, I want this and this.
This, I think that's basically us giving two services in like one shot. Sounds like a great deal to me, honestly.
you know this whole idea of focus is something that in fact, just yesterday I did a workshop on focus for people, because focus is something that people are completely losing in today's day and age. There is no focus when it comes to our mobile phone usage. It's constantly taking our attention, and there are so many things screaming for our attention. Notifications on the phone, interesting things to watch on TV, on websites, etc. We're all getting diffused. And I realized that we're all living very, very diffused lives. As a result, there is so much uncertainty, there is so much angst in the world on where is my life going? Your life is not going anywhere because there is so much diffused effort and energy. Imagine if you could just, for the next 3 months, focus on one thing. Yeah, there's this idea of disappear for 3 months. Go away from everything and just focus on that one thing that you're going to be doing. And you see such a dramatic leap in the quality of your life from there onwards.
In fact, I read this somewhere today that being a beginner is the best thing that you can do for yourself. It opens up so many avenues to learn, to grow, and do that at the same time while actually enjoying and being happy at what you're trying to do rather than just burning out, hitting plateau, fighting against it, periodizing it, spacing it out, focusing on one thing, and being a beginner all over again.
Being a beginner and looking at life through the eyes of a child, like, whoa, how is this happening? I think it's fantastic.
So much curiosity.
Okay. How do you help people get rid of boredom? See, because if you focus on one thing over and over and over again, people keep saying, but boredom, this is going to be boring. Someone's practicing for a back squat and you're only focusing on this one thing. How do you maintain the newness, or how do you overcome that feeling of boredom? How do you do it for your life when you were training as an athlete?
Boredom comes like so easily, it is not even funny because you're in that four walls. You're showing up every single day, you're doing the routine over and over and over again, and discipline is not fancy. It's really, really boring. Setting goals together or choosing what you want to focus on together makes a whole lot of difference because both of us, somebody who has the knowledge to let them know if something is possible or not, and somebody who genuinely and truly wants to learn, when both those people come on the same page and understand what is required to reach a certain goal, I think that makes it a lot more interesting. When you are aware of what it is that you're doing, your energies are also invested in it. So I think it's a very two-way street. And it's okay to take a break. So if you feel like you're hitting the wall, you're hitting fatigue, you're getting really, really bored, we get out and we do something else. So having that space open, because discipline gets boring for me as well. On some days, I would just not want to work out. I'm like, that's fine. Let me just go for a walk. It's okay. I don't have to necessarily do this, but let's also not do something that's going to destroy all the progress that you have.
Correct.
Just take a break, go out, do something else, or maybe don't do anything at all. That's also a completely valid option to choose and to go from. How would you handle this situation?
Making and falling in love with the boring stuff. I remember this so well. For a week, I told people that, listen, I'm a habit coach. And on the social media apps, I said that every day I'm going to show you all the habits that I do. By day three, people started commenting saying that, Ashdin, you're so boring. Ashdin, you're so boring. There's nothing new. What are you showing us? And I was like, exactly. This is how, change takes place when you focus on these things over and over and over and over again and live that boring life. Now, is that exciting for people listening to us? No.
Absolutely
But
not.
that is where growth comes from, through the boring things done over and over again.
It's always the dal khichdi that keeps your stomach all right.
Yeah,
Always.
you need the fancy stuff once in a while.
Once in a while.
The problem is that we choose dal khichdi and fancy stuff all the time together. It is
Competing.
about focus and then taking a break, and then focus and then taking a break. So we go on holidays, we go out, and that break comes in automatically. So I think that is the way in which you can actually balance out the boredom.
Also gives you so much more energy to just go at it again. And that's exactly why we all take breaks, right?
Yeah.
So to recuperate, to get everything back to base level and then just hone in again and then keep going for it.
It's also not getting influenced by what the neighbor's doing.
FOMO is real.
FOMO is real. Oh my God, they're going here, they're doing this. Even I want to do this. They're now training for, I don't know, gymnastics. I want to also do gymnastics when you've been training for your back squat, like you said. So, not getting distracted. Even in the investment world, suddenly this new kind of thing comes up that your friend comes and tells you about. You get distracted. It is about that continuous focus that you have created, the plan that you made for yourself, and actually sticking to it. It might seem boring, but that is actually where the money will be there and multiply.
It's because you're letting it be, you're letting it compound, and you're putting all your time and energy there rather than always picking it apart, trying to do 10,000 things at the same time and not really. It's, as you said, diffused. Energy diffused, money diffused, time diffused. It's really not going to get you anywhere.
And one of the things that I see people doing is they'll invest their money, and the little interest that comes from the investments, they break it. They pull it out and then invest somewhere else. And they just keep doing this. What they've done is the children, basically the children that the interest is the children that has fructified, they have completely squandered away and they've destroyed it. So instead, what we need to do is we need to realize that with the focus, one thing or two things where you focus on, the compounding effect is far more than diffusing it in different places and then having something that is not as potent. Consistency comes from those one or two things that you do repetitively, and that is where growth comes from. We instead think that I'm going to do something dramatic, but once or twice. That is not good enough. You need to be consistent in it to win it.
This is like the piggy bank system, Like if you've invested the time and the effort and the money someplace, you get those tiny increments back, take them, put it in a piggy bank. Two not so competing habits, but two very parallel habits that's going to lead you to the same end goal.
I think the competing habits are, why should we have things that compete with each other?
It just makes so much more sense to have our habits, our finances, the physical increments that we make in the exercises, and the exercises that we choose, the habits that we choose, the ways that we choose to invest and save, for them to be compounding rather than for them to be competing against each other.
I love this. Compound, don't compete.
100% and
Woohoo.
always.
And on that note, let's have all these episodes that we've recorded about the compounding mindset with Axis Mutual Fund compound and grow and change the way we look at our lives. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to hit subscribe because there are a lot more episodes coming out.
And let us know in the comment section below what are the habits that you are working on and what are these two habits that you let compound. Everything we've spoken about today, habits, focus, periodization, it's not just relevant to fitness or personal growth. It's exactly how compounding works in investing. Think about it. When you choose a few well picked investments and give them time, focus, and consistency, they grow. Not in big, dramatic leaps every day, but slowly, steadily, building on themselves until one day the results feel almost magical. It's the same with our habits. If you're constantly distracted, hopping between different goals, whether it's in the gym or in your portfolio. You're diffusing your energy and your returns. But when you double down on the right things, you allow progress to stack on progress, interest on interest. And just like in investing, the little wins, the daily reps, the small gains shouldn't be withdrawn prematurely. You let them stay. You let them work for you. That's where the real growth happens. So, whether it's in your body, your mind, or your bank account, the principle is the same: compound, don't compete. Pick the right things, stick with them, give them time, and watch how they transform not just your results, but your life.
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme related documents carefully.